Go. Okay, first hour, this went very well. I expect to go well this hour because you guys are an extremely intelligent group. And here's what I got for you. Let's say you have 0 is equal to x squared minus 3x minus 4. In the last unit, we solved that type of equation. In fact, that even came up yesterday a little bit, okay? Does that factor?
Yeah.
To what?
-4.
-4 and +1. So what are the two solutions? 4 and -1. You're like, big deal, right? Well, that's the beautiful thing in math, that all it requires is just changing one simple thing. So suppose I had 0 is equal to x squared minus 3x minus 5. Almost the identical equation, right?
Except it's not actually possible.
You can't factor that, can you? And when something doesn't factor, one method of solving it is to use the quadratic formula. Now, we got two options. I can either make you memorize this for the test, or I could give you it on the test. Which do you want?
Give it.
Okay, I'll give it to you on the test, okay? It would be of value for you to memorize it, okay? I'll say, especially if you intend on taking math class in the future, I definitely don't give it on any tests. Something you should memorize. One of the most important parts of the quadratic formula, okay, is what we call the discriminant. It's this piece that sits underneath the square root sign. That's called the discriminant. The discriminant discriminates what kind of solutions we have and how many. That's why it's called the discriminant. It tells us the difference. So it's b squared minus 4ac. Suppose that you end up with the square root of 16. Is there a square root of 16? Yeah, there sure is. And notice the plus or minus out front, so we list that answer as +4 or -4. So if you have a positive number underneath the square root sign, there are two solutions. Now you can think about that from the solution standpoint of two solutions, is just memorizing that, or you can think about it in terms of a graph. Does anybody know what shape an x squared equation makes? If you look at these x squared minus 3x minus 4, x squared minus 3x minus 5, do you know what shape that makes? Yeah, it starts with a P, rhymes with parabola. Makes a parabola. Okay, shape looks like this. Okay, how many times does that cross the x-axis? It crosses twice. So you can see that it has two solutions. That's what it means to have a solution. It means it crosses the x-axis. We're going to be tying that in next unit. Suppose you have a different number in a square root sign. Suppose you have a 0, square root of 0. Okay, what is the square root of 0? 0. Is there a difference between +0 and -0? No, they're the same thing. So if you get 0 underneath, that means that there's one solution. It's only one solution. Well, what does a graph look like where it only crosses the x-axis once? That's interesting. It comes on down and it just touches the x-axis in one spot. That would be a one solution scenario. Is it possible to draw a graph that doesn't cross the x-axis?
Yes.
Yeah. And so if you drew it like this, notice it never crosses the x-axis. And what that looks like is if you get the square root of a negative number, say the square root of -25. Okay? Square root of -25. Now some of you are like, well, Mr. Gans, the answer is -5. Think about, folks, 5 times 5 is 25. What's -5 times -5?
25.
+25. So you could see that you don't come up with a -25. If you remember from your class last year, the square root of -25 is actually 5i. It's an imaginary number. Like, what? Imaginary numbers? They're actually super cool. We don't spend a lot of time talking about imaginary numbers in this class, but they are neat. So if you end up with a negative number in a square root, there are no real solutions. There are no real solutions. Never crosses the x-axis. Any question about that? Okay, so we're going to do a couple things before we do the quadratic formula. First of all, we're just going to practice looking at the discriminant. It says find the value of the discriminant, namely b squared minus 4ac. Okay, we want to compute that for each of these and identify then the number of solutions and the type of solutions it has. Okay, so as I look at this, what is a in this problem?
1.
A is 1. What is b? -6, and c is 9. So as you compute b squared minus 4ac, what is negative 6 squared? 36. That number should never be negative. It should always be positive, because when you square something, it will become positive. Minus 4 times 1 times 9. Okay? So that's 36 minus 36, which is 0. So you have one real solution. That's all you got. Let's look at, we're going to skip 2 and 4. We're going to do problem number 3. Again, we want to do b squared minus 4ac. What is a? Negative 1. B is, and c is 2. What is b squared? Minus 4 times, what is a? And what is c?
2.
How many subtraction signs, or how many negative signs do you have here?
2.
We have 2. So therefore, I'll write it out once, but if you have 2, they're going to cancel each other. It's going to become addition. Notice how I have 1 minus 4 times negative is negative 4 times 2 is negative 8. Notice how I get 1 minus negative 8. So it's 1 plus 8, which is 9. So that's a positive number. So how many solutions will you have?
2.
2. 2 real solutions. Okay. All right, let's flip it over.
What is this?
Sometimes when we do the quadratic formula, our answers end up looking kind of strange. Our answers kind of look like this. So before we actually make use of the entire quadratic formula, I want to practice simplifying what things look like in your result. So this first one says 6 plus or minus the square root of 24 over 4. That might be an answer you get from the quadratic formula. Now, this is not simplified because you can do what? There's a perfect square divides evenly into 24. What is the perfect square that divides evenly into 24? So I have 4 and I have 6. Okay? That becomes 6 plus or minus 2 roots of 6 all over 4. Now it turns out that you can reduce that. There's a number that you can factor out of the top that will divide with the number that's a factor of the bottom. If you factor a 2 out of the top, you're left with 3 plus or minus the root of 6 over 2 times 2.
What?
So I just wrote 4 as 2 times 2.
Where'd you get the 3?
So 2 times 3 is 6.
Okay.
And then 2 times root of 6 is 2 roots of 6. So I factored that 2 out front. Good question. Notice how the 2's reduce, and I get 3 plus or minus the root of 6 all over 2. Now, I don't show that every time. Usually what I tell people to do is just look at those numbers right here. What are those numbers all divisible by?
2.
So you divide them by 2, you get 3, 1, and 2. That's how I usually think of it. You okay with that? Okay, we're not going to do all these. We're just going to do problem 5, 6, and 7. Okay, what is the number that, or what's the perfect square that divides evenly into 45? I got 9 and I've got 5. So I have 3 plus or minus the root of 9 times the root of 5 all over 9. Okay, what is the square root of 9? So I have 3 plus or minus 3 roots of 5 all over 9. I look at the numbers that remain. What are all 3 of those divisible by? So when you divide them by 3, you get 1 plus or minus 1 root of 5 over 3. Please try number 7 on your own. Try number 7 on your own.
No, you just, I was so confused.
Is you right?
Oh, yeah, I was confused.
I got 3 plus or minus root of 5 over 6. Any questions there?
Can you simplify that down?
You want to do the 3 divided by the 6? You can't do that because it would have to have a fact. If you had a 3 in front of the 5, the square root of 5, then you could. But the common factor has to be shared by both. Has to be shared by both. Okay?
There's a 1.
Yep, there's a 1. Okay? All right. So let's move down. We are going to now perform the quadratic formula. On the test, this will be worth 3 points apiece for you. We'll have x is equal to, if you need to write it down, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all divided by twice the a value. There we have it. So that's going to allow us to figure out these answers. We're going to do problem number 11, 12, and 14. We're going to skip problem number 13. I'm going to list A, B, and C. A is 1. What is B? Negative 3. C is? Negative 18. What is negative B? 3. Plus or minus the square root of square B? 9.
Whoa.
That number is never negative, is it? You square something, it will be positive. Minus 4 times A is 1 and C is negative 18. All divided by what's going to go on the bottom. Yep, 2 times 1 is 2. I will get people that on the test, they'll get to this problem and they'll just write this, okay? Okay, drives me absolutely nuts. Because that is not about intelligence, that's about effort. Can everybody agree that everybody can at least plug the numbers in? You can plug the numbers in, folks. Okay? You get 1 point for plugging the numbers in correctly. Everybody should get at least 1 point there. To get the second point, you've got to be able to come up with the discriminant. So it's 3 plus or minus the square root of 9. Is it going to be 9 plus or 9 minus?
9 plus.
9 plus because the 2 negatives will cancel. I get a 9 plus. Then what's 4 times 1 times 18?
52.
72. If you're doing the operation on your calculator, you've got to be very careful, especially a phone. You might not get the correct result. Okay? I got 9 plus 72 is?
81.
Great. So the number underneath the square root sign is positive. That means I have how many solutions?
2.
You have 2. You have 2 solutions. Is there a square root of 81?
9.
Sweet. So I'm just going to go ahead and write that as 3 plus or minus 9 over 2. And I'm now going to find my 2 solutions. I first do 3 plus 9, which is 12, divided by 2 is 6. So 6 is one of the solutions. My other solution is 3 minus 9, which is Negative 6. And negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. So I have 6 and negative 3 are my two solutions. Okay? It figured it out for me. Little bit of work to it, right? All right, the next one. What is negative b? 11. Plus or minus the square root of, what is b squared?
122 or 121.
Negative 11 squared is 121 minus 4 times a is 2 and c is 5. What number goes in the denominator? 4, because it's 2a, so it's twice the a value, so I have 4. Again, everybody can plug in those numbers. It is now 11 plus or minus the square root of, okay, 121 minus that, okay? Is it 121 minus, or is it going to be 121 plus?
Minus.
121 minus. And I got 121 minus 40 is 81. We get 81 again. So how many solutions are there? 2. So I could take the square root of 81, which is 9. And I can use that to find my two solutions. What is 11 plus 9 divided by 4? I get 5. If you notice my next one, 11 minus 9 is 2. And 2 divided by 4, how should I write that? 0.5 or 1/2. I'd accept either answer on the test. So you can come up with fractions as an answer. Our last example for this unit, problem number 14. What's different about this? It's not equal to 0. You must set it equal to 0. So I have a negative x squared minus 8x plus 4 is equal to 0 after you add that 4 over to the other side. And the quadratic formula says b squared, which is, negative b, which is 8. Plus or minus the square root of, what is b squared? 64 minus 4 times the a value is negative 1 and the c value is positive 4. Divided by what goes on the bottom this time? Negative 2. That is 8 plus or minus the square root of, is it going to be 64 plus or 64 minus? 64 plus. And 4 times 1 times 4 is going to be 16. What is 64 plus 16? So it's positive, so I have two solutions. Okay, I've got two solutions. But is there a square root of 80? No, so we're going to have to simplify it. What is the perfect square that divides evenly into 80? What's
16 and 5.
16 and 5. 16 is the best one. If you chose 4, you'll just have to do it twice. 4 goes in twice. Okay? But 16 is the best choice. So I've got 8 plus or minus the square root of 16 and the square root of 5, all divided by negative 2. Or 8 plus or minus 4 roots of 5 divided by negative 2. And just like we practiced up top, are those all divisible by something? They're all divisible by 2. So divide them by 2 and we get 4 plus or minus 2 roots of 5 over negative 1. Now, if somebody else, like me, feels uncomfortable writing the answer like that, that's fine. If you wrote that answer on the test, that'd be fine. But you could also write it as, if you divide 4 by negative 1, you get negative 4. And if you divide 2 by negative 1, you get negative 2. But because you have the plus or minus, you just have to write 2 roots of 5. So Those are the same answers. They're the same. Okay, mean the same thing. Okay, good job. Quadratic formula. So this is a short unit. It's only 4 assignments in length because the next unit is also 4. I used to have that all together as a total of 8. People didn't do very well on the test. I've broken up into 2 tests, so hopefully it goes better. In the past few years it has. You guys are an extremely intelligent group, so I would expect it will go well for you also. You have some time. If you don't get caught up on homework today, that's all right, because tomorrow you have a full day to check these things out, be able to work through your questions. And we also have 2 days to prepare for our test next week, Monday and Tuesday.